I taught Kung Fu for about 10 years. One of the things that I discussed in many self-defense classes was the role of feelings in a self-defense situation. Some martial arts instructors would tell their students to always trust their gut because it's never wrong. I have looked into the stats on that, and it's not very accurate. That said, it is right sometimes. Sometimes, there's evidence that's difficult to articulate accurately, and the queasy feeling in the pit of the stomach is all there is to go on. Even if it could be wrong, I would much rather have the funny conversation a year later about that time someone tried to return a wallet, and it was met with skeptical violence than the not-so-funny conversation about the time someone was kidnapped even though they had a bad feeling. This movie plays on that quite successfully. A couple that's fallen on slightly harder times accepts an invitation from a family they just met to their villa in the country. The wife feels that things are off, but the husband doesn't listen until it's too late. By the time they're actually ready to leave, they've been cornered and secured. There was actually quite a bit to appreciate about this movie, even if I personally would have been more attentive to my wife's instincts. The best part of the movie, though, was everything after the cornering. One of the things that I appreciated is that the Dalton family didn't immediately turn into Jason Bourne or John Wick. As someone that taught martial arts, there's a skill to violence that doesn't come naturally. There's a reason that most semi-superheroes of that sort are trained assassins or ex-military or something like that. It was kind of fun to watch Ben Dalton light a wine bottle hoping to ignite a thatched roof only to watch it roll off and land on the ground. When I was writing my latest book, Trouble with Telepaths, this was one thing that I wanted to convey about my villain. Even though he's infected with a telepathic pathogen that makes him violent and delusional, it does not bring experience to back up that violence. He's not able to take on those with more violent experience than himself directly. It's a skill he has to learn. I wanted to demonstrate this with a scene where he was taken by people with more violent experience than him. Even with his inhibitions gone, he had to learn how to be violent and how to attack his enemies both physically and psychically. You can read my new book on Kindle Unlimited for free, or you can get the paperback from Amazon. Chuck was frisked, then ran through a metal detector, then frisked again. The two men that had found him took him by the arms and lifted him off the ground, then dumped him in a wooden chair in front of a well-dressed man smoking a cigar. The well-dressed man leaned forward on his desk. "Do you know who I am?" Chuck spit some of the remaining blood out of his mouth onto the floor. "Not really. I can't say that I care either." "Yes, well, see, my nephew is the boy you killed a few weeks back." Chuck shrugged. "Sure. Although, if you want me to have a better understanding of who you're talking about, you'll need to narrow it down a little more first." "He was the one on the bike," the rich man growled. Chuck shrugged again. "Motorbike or bicycle?" The rich man cocked his head. "Do you really not remember my nephew?" Chuck sighed. "Look, I remember a lot of things and I forget a lot of things. There was a kid on a bicycle that was about 12. I was hungry, and he was convenient. If that was your nephew, I'm sorry. A guy has to eat, though. Then there was the guy on the green motorcycle. Dead end on another quest, I'm afraid." Then Chuck smiled. "Then there was the guy on the black bike. Over 6 feet. Quite the fighter. Yum. He was delicious. It's such a pity he gave out in the end. But he turned out to be the lead I was looking for." The blood drained out of the rich man's face. "You ate them?" Chuck looked confused. "No, you idiot. I consumed their violence and fear. I'm not a savage." The rich man took out a gun. "My nephew was the one on the black bike." Chuck nodded quickly, smiling. "You raised him right. He fought back until the bitter end. I spent a whole week with him." The rich man put the gun to Chuck's face. "He was my nephew. You will not laugh at his death." Just then, One of the guards let out a chuckle, but he stifled it. Then another coughed, and was obviously trying to contain himself. "What's going on? Did you drug them?" the rich man asked. "Drug them? No. I'm just helping them to see the humor in all of this." The rich man looked around as one by one his guards started bursting into laughter. Then Chuck punched him in the face before taking the gun away. All the guards immediately pulled their composure together. They pulled out their guns ready to shoot Chuck, but couldn't steady their aim. The rich man looked around and watched as the eyes rolled back in their heads, and they each fell to the ground having a seizure. Chuck raised the gun to the rich man. "I had a little more time to work in the minds of your men. You were too focused to penetrate. Being the hunter doesn't turn me into James Bond, but it's not without its perks. I can make a very deep connection to people, given enough time. I can create quite the psychic shock at times. But now you're just as dead.